All right, let's lock in. When we talk about performance, it's generally the nervous system and the muscular system working together as one. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to look at fiber types, how the nervous system recruits motor units, how quickly it can increase force using something known as summation. And finally, we're going to look at proprioceptors, how proprioceptors protect you and improve range of movement. These are the three muscle fiber types you need to know. Type 1, type 2A, and type 2X. And simply, you should be able to define, describe, and characterize these different muscle fiber types by these factors: contraction speed, force production, fatigue resistance, and the energy pathway that they use, whether it's an aerobic or an anaerobic energy pathway. For type 1 slow twitch muscle fibers, their key characteristics are they have a slow contraction speed, produce low to moderate force, very fatigue resistance, so they can go for a long time without tiring out, and they have a high aerobic capacity because they have loads of mitochondria, a lot of capillarization, and a lot of myoglobin stores. Usually as well, type 1 muscle fibers are more red just because they have more capillaries and more blood flow going to them. Type 2A muscle fibers, fast oxidative glycolytic muscle fibers. These are their key characteristics: faster contraction than type 1 muscle fibers, moderate to high force production, fairly fatigue resistance, more than type 2X but not as fatigue resistant as type 1 muscle fibers, and they can produce energy ATP both aerobically and anaerobically. Next we have type 2X, fast glycolytic muscle fibers. These muscle fibers have a very fast speed of contraction. They produce very high force and have a high power potential, but they fatigue very quickly. And lastly, they rely heavily on anaerobic energy production, specifically using the glycolytic energy system. An example of an exam question you might get could be something like this: explain which fiber type is the most beneficial for a 1500 meter runner and why. Obviously, that would be the type 1 muscle fiber type that you would identify, and then list 2 or 3 of its characteristics and then link it to the demands of the activity. That's how you would get full marks for that question. Now, when we talk about nervous system control, we want to think about 2 different modes, right? 2 different modes that your body can be in. Your body can be in a sympathetic mode, sympathetic phase, or in the parasympathetic phase. We've spoken about this before in a previous video. The sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight. That's what prepares your body for exercise. It ramps your body up during exercise. Parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite. It's your rest and digest. And this is what dominates when you are resting and recovering. So in effect, during exercise, your sympathetic nervous system activity increases and your parasympathetic nervous system activity reduces, and vice versa happens when you are resting. So that's why when you're exercising, your heart rate increases, your breathing rate increases. Those are all effects of your sympathetic nervous system being in control. Now let's look at the role of proprioceptors. First of all, what are proprioceptors? Proprioceptors are receptors in the body, sensory receptors that can tell your nervous system what the body is doing, what position your body is in, how your body is moving, how your body and your muscles are stretching, and the tension that is in your body. So it's all about movement, position, and having your body be aware of what you are doing in space. And when we talk about proprioceptors, we want to make reference to muscle spindles and GTO, or Golgi tendon organs. Muscle spindles, they sit within the muscle and they respond when a muscle is stretched. So when there's tension being put on the muscle, having it to stretch, and they work by triggering the stretch reflex to resist any sudden overstretching, so that it can help you maintain your posture and maintain muscle tone, and obviously prevents you from getting hurt. Golgi tendon organs, GTO, they detect tension, right? They are actually located near the tendon. That's why they are named Golgi tendon organ. They're located whether near the tendon or in the tendon, and they respond to any increases in tension. So when tension is high, they can reduce how much your muscle activates, and this is known as prohibitive inhibition. So they can cause prohibitive inhibition to prevent damage when tension gets really high. Lastly, when we talk about proprioceptors, we want to be able to describe them in the context of PNF. PNF, which stands for proprioceptive neuromuscular function, is a type of stretching. It's a type of stretching where you stretch and then you contract the muscle and then you relax and then you stretch again. The second time you'll be able to go for a deeper stretch. So it's like if you had a partner, you lay down on your back and you had them stretch your hamstrings really, really hard, and then you contract at the end of the stretch and then you relax and then they stretch again, you would find out that second stretch you would actually be able to push your leg a further distance, and that is PNF in action. So when talking about PNF, you want to talk about the muscle spindles and how the GTOs, Golgi tendon organs, actually operate. So what happens is that during PNF, your muscle spindles detect the stretch and the Golgi tendon organs detect the tension. And the contraction phase of PNF increases the activity of your proprioceptors. So it increases proprioceptive input, and this can reduce resistance to the stretch, which allows for a greater range of movement. Now let's talk about muscle fibers. Let's talk about muscle fiber recruitment, motor units, spatial summation, wave summation, all or non-law, and all of those different aspects that relate to muscle fibers. So first of all, very simply, what is a muscle fiber? What is a motor unit? First of all, a motor unit is one motor neuron and all the muscle fibers that it innervates. So to innervate just means to supply, right? So one motor neuron and all the muscle fibers that it supplies. A muscle fiber is just a muscle cell. And motor units are obviously the bedrock of muscle contractions because that's where the contraction originates from. And muscle contractions obey the all or none law. The all or none law is a law that states within a single muscle fiber or within a motor unit, a stimulus will either trigger a full contraction of all the muscle fibers that motor unit supplies or innervates, or trigger no contraction at all. So a motor unit can't only trigger 50% of its motor fibers to contract. Once there's an impulse, a stimulus sent to the motor unit to cause the muscle to contract, if it's strong enough, it's going to cause all of the motor fibers in that motor unit to contract, or none of them are going to contract at all if that stimulus, that impulse, isn't strong enough. So that's the all or none law. Now let's look at how the body actually increases force, because if we can't activate 50 or 70% of the muscle fibers within a specific motor unit, then how exactly can we adjust the amount of force you produce? Like, how exactly can you only ensure that you're producing around 30% of your max force or 50% of your max force? And this is where spatial summation, wave summation come into play. So spatial summation is where you recruit more motor units. Spatial summation is also known as motor unit summation, and it just means, yes, that impulse has been sent to one motor unit. Well, you can send the impulse to another motor unit and more motor units, more and more and more, so that overall more motor fibers are being recruited. And it's worth remembering that the recruitment of motor unit generally follows the size principle. The size principle is just that the smaller motor units come first, so they get stimulated first and they contract first, and the larger motor units come later on because more force, more stimulation, more activation is needed for those. Secondly, we have wave summation. Wave summation is where you fire faster impulses, faster stimuli to the motor units to create stronger and stronger contractions. So wave summation happens when a motor neuron will fire once, they create that initial contraction, and then they fire again before that initial contraction has even finished. And then before the next one finishes, they fire again and again and again and again and again. So that contraction just grows and grows and grows and grows before the previous contraction has even fully relaxed, and all the tension from all those contractions sort of bundle up together and cause you to be able to create a lot of force. So as you can see from this diagram, this is an example of what spatial summation would look like. Let's say before you're only recruiting one motor unit, afterwards you'll be able to recruit 3 motor units to be able to create more force. That is spatial summation, just recruiting more motor units. Wave summation, on the other hand, slightly different. Let's say there's been an impulse. So let's say there's been an impulse that has been sent to a motor neuron, causing all of the muscle fibers that are innervated by that motor neuron to contract. Before that contraction even comes to an end, imagine you send another impulse and another impulse and another impulse. So it causes the tension to build up from all of these contractions so that a greater amount of force can be released. Now, wave summation can be shown like this on a graph. So that first impulse gets sent, causes the contraction to happen. Before it fully comes to an end, another one gets sent. Before that one fully comes to an end, another one gets sent, and another one gets sent, and another one gets sent. Obviously, you can't produce more force than the maximum amount of tension that your muscles can produce. But by bundling these different twitches, these different contractions together, you're able to create a greater force of contraction. There's also something known as tetanic contractions. So a tetanic contraction is a bit similar to wave summation, but it's a lot more drastic. This is probably something you use if you're going for a 1 rep max or something like that, because it's similar concept where the firing frequency becomes very high, right? But it becomes so high that you don't even wait for the contraction to almost finish, right? In this one, the contraction is going almost its full course, and then when it's about to rest, then another one is sent. But in tetanic contraction, once that impulse gets sent, another one 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 gets sent, just back to 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 back, all the way until you reach the peak amount of force that you are trying to exert. And again, you obviously can't go above your max tension. But tetanic contraction is just wave summation on steroids, and it causes a sustained contraction, which is referred to as tetanus. All right, now let's bring it all together and let's look at how the intensity of the activity that one is being involved in decides which type of muscle fiber will be recruited. We have low intensity, high intensity, and obviously during recovery, you're just in a parasympathetic state. You're not necessarily recruiting muscles because you're not exercising, you're not performing. So this is how you link intensity to the motor fiber type. Alright, that is it for this video. If you enjoyed this video and you want to do much more practice questions, be sure to check out superpeonline.com, the best PE platform in the world. Yeah, I said it. See you there and see you in the next video.